All right. Welcome to Assets and Algorithms, the podcast where we explore the intersection of real estate and technology. I'm here today with Bill Himelstein, and we're going to dive right in. Thank you for joining me, Bill.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thrilled to be here, Derek. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, I'd love to start off by just asking you to share a bit about your role and how it fits into the bigger picture.
Yeah, as the founder and CEO of Tenant Advisory Group, my role is really to get the right people in the right seats and give them the right tools to be the best that they can be. Very simple. Same thing as being a parent, right? You want to give your kids the right tools so they can be the best they can be. And so that's my number one role is getting the right people in the right seats and giving them the right processes and tools to be exceptional at what they do. But the other side of the coin, I see myself as a connected connector. And what that means is taking this amazing network that I've built in over 25 years in the business community here in Chicago and using that network to support the growth of my clients and prospects' businesses. And so that's really a big part of my kind of day to day is thinking outwardly, thinking what can I do? Who in my network can be supportive of the other folks in my network? And that's really what I spend a lot of time thinking about and putting effort towards.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think that's super important, right? Being able to bring people together and have them help and support each other to push them closer to their goals. That's beautiful.
Derek, a lot of people overlook the fact that something that's going to oftentimes get you a lot further is by not thinking about yourself and thinking about others. It's kind of counterintuitive to think, all right, I'm not going to focus on getting this transaction done, but rather I'm going to focus on doing what's right for my client and doing what's right for those around me. And sadly, I do believe that that's overlooked quite often. Yet, when you have that as part of your daily practice to support those around you, to uplift those around you, it's like the old saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. So if I can support others, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's probably going to end up benefiting myself.
Okay. I love that mindset, right? And it's definitely a mindset that it takes to push that mission forward. So let me ask you a little bit about a typical day for you. What tools are you using tech-wise, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So, number one, the most important thing to our business is our database called CoStar. CoStar is very similar to the MLS, the multiple listing service for residential, but CoStar is focused predominantly on commercial side of real estate. So, for example, if we're trying to find out, we got a client that's looking to purchase a property, we can type in the parameters and that'll tell us all the properties that are available for purchase. Tells us who built the building and when, how much debt is on it, who owns it, who are the tenants, what their contact information is, when their leases are expiring. I mean, plethora of information. So CoStar, as much as I hate to admit it because they charge me an arm and a leg, is very valuable. It's very valuable to us. Another thing that we use that's really helpful for us is LinkedIn. And we have LinkedIn Sales Navigator, but a big part of my business is really about getting in front of the right people. And so my team members are able to look up a contact of mine's connections, and based on a certain set of parameters like title, size of business, location, we can find out if there's somebody that we want to meet or not, if we want to get in front of them. And outside of those two things, I'll also tell you that AI is really starting to find a place in our business, whether it's from the marketing side, from the talent recruitment side. There's really, I think we're just scratching the surface on the potential here of AI, but it's really been a tremendous resource for us. But so those are probably I'd say the three main things that we're working with on a daily basis. And I know I'm probably forgetting about stuff because, Derek, the more my business grows, I think the further away from some of the core work that's getting done that I get. So I'm sure if one of my teammates is listening, they're going to be like, Bill, how come you didn't say, this software? How come you didn't talk about this? But from my perspective, And from my level of awareness, it's CoStar, it's LinkedIn, and it's Chat GPT.
Awesome. I think those are definitely powerful tools, and it's wonderful to hear that you're implementing ChatGPT, which is relatively new to be able to see some results. I think that that's one of the shifts that I'm seeing. A ton of businesses are using ChatGPT and implementing that across all industries, but particularly in real estate to see results and to get results. So let me ask you, what major shifts would you say you're seeing in the industry right now?
I think that's a great question. And in the 25 years I've been in this industry, I've always, in general, I've heard a lot of talk about technology infiltrating the industry. But in a lot of ways, I feel like we're just some old school industry that's been very resistant or very hesitant to implement technology because I see a lot of different databases, right? Things like, gosh, of course, now I'm blanking, but there's a lot of different sort of database management tools, Salesforce type of
Hmm.
situation. A lot of those are good. Just depends on what you're looking for. I think some of the biggest tools that are starting to be implemented in real estate that I believe are the most helpful are a lot of like space planning tools where you
Mm-hmm.
can put into the database, this is how many people we need to accommodate for. We'd like one conference room to seat 20 people. We'd like one conference room to seat 10 people. We'd like a kitchenette. We need a reception area. And of these 20 people, we need this many offices, this many cube. You put in your kind of parameters,
Hmm.
and there's software that can spit out, oh, well, you need, 8,000 square feet, or, here's a sample layout for you. And that's, to me, is some of the really cool stuff. And the reason why I think it's cool, especially in this day and age, Derek, is that, you know, pre-pandemic, companies who are looking for space, I think, could lead with the broker and say, hey, we got 50 people. How much space do you think we need? And we could
Hmm.
spit out, oh, well, about 250 square feet per person. We need 8,000 feet, whatever it is,
Hmm.
10,000 feet. But nowadays, in the post pandemic era, companies in general are using their space very differently than they did pre pandemic. And so,
Hmm.
in my mind, I believe the process should just as easily start with the architect and the designer to say, okay, we understand you've got 50 people, but let's talk about how you plan on using this space. And the biggest game changer that I've seen post pandemic compared to pre pandemic is that the space is not just to come in, sit down, heads down, and work. Now it's much more about collaboration and connecting with team members and mentorship and educating the younger generation. And so the one biggest thing that's kind of molded into the I guess we could call it like the typical layout now versus the typical layout pre-pandemic is the kitchen. The
Hmm.
kitchenette, just like at home, is like the gathering space. That's where everybody's meeting to chit chat and having those water cooler conversations and running ideas past each other. And so the kitchenette is now far more prominent. It's now oftentimes found in the center of the space. Now more than ever, they'll have beautiful views, right? They'll put that
Hmm.
kitchenette on the window line instead of on the interior of the space. And so it's really kind of these spaces that are being designed more towards providing team members comforts and conveniences that they can't get at home, but that will also facilitate team building exercises and collaboration and communication within teams. And so, a lot more team rooms and breakout rooms as opposed to individual offices. But really, the single biggest factor that I've seen that has changed is that kitchenette is sort of like the focal point of the space now. And I think, like I said, everybody's using their space vastly different than they were pre-pandemic. And so I
Hmm.
really believe that the start of the process should be with the architect. That's what I believe. Now, every single broker that knows me is going to hate me now for saying that, but that's what I believe. When I start talking to my clients on a new assignment, it's not how many people do you have? Okay, great. This is how much square feet we should be looking for. But
Hmm.
rather, it's, do you have an architect? And if not, can I introduce you to one? Because we need to know what you want your space to look like so we can either go out and find it or go out and find that raw space that can then be built out for what you want.
I love it. I think you provided a unique perspective on, what's going on in the market, and especially since the pandemic was, as impactful as it was, and how things are changing and maybe looking towards the future. So I love that answer. I'd also like to ask you, since you are providing such unique insights, are there any unique deal structures or creative methods that you've seen in the space that you think people should be aware of?
Absolutely. And first of all, that's a great question. I appreciate you shed light on that. And, number one, I would want to talk about sale-leasebacks, and that's becoming more and more popular. In the past, it used to be reserved for companies that might be struggling financially or wanting to shore up their balance sheet. So they sell this asset of the real estate and then lease it back to that investor that purchased it. But now it's also becoming a lot more prevalent with private equity firms who they buy a business, and along with it comes 1, 2, 5, 10, whatever, how many owned facilities might be. And typically, private equity is going to make a lot more money growing that business that they purchase, as opposed to hoping for appreciation in the real estate. So what they want to do is, once they purchase the business, is unlock all the trapped capital they have in their real estate so they can either pay down debt or accelerate growth. And so we're really seeing a lot more sale-leaseback transactions, which I think is, it's relatively, I'm not going to say new, but it's relatively unknown, right? It's not as familiar as just a straight purchase, sale, or lease. Another way to structure things that we're seeing, especially with earlier stage businesses that are trying to manage their risk, is back end loading a lease. And what that means is we get the landlord to charge a lower upfront rate, but just take whatever the discount was or the reduction and put it on the back end of the lease. So they're essentially giving that business a leg up. They're giving them a boost by charging them less in the beginning to help them get off their feet, get up and running, get some traction, find some success. And then once things are rolling steadily and they're doing well, then they kind of pay it back at the end of the lease term. I think something else, here's the biggest unused negotiation tool for tenants, and that is a right to terminate. All right. It's hard to get that in leases under 5 years. Typically, it's got to be a 7-year lease or longer to get a right to terminate. But one of the biggest reason why landlords don't want to give that out is, number one, the value of their building will not be counted past the right to terminate. So the value of that lease, which contributes to the value of the property, it's only allowed to be factored into the value of the building up to the right to terminate. So anything, if you sign a 10-year lease and have a right to terminate at year 7, you can only value the first 7 years of that lease. The last 3, years 8, 9, and 10, cannot be counted towards the value of the building. So landlords hate it. But why it's so valuable for a tenant, Derek, is that essentially you can use that right to terminate as a right to renegotiate. So when you approach that right to terminate, you can go to the landlord, whether the market's gone up or down from when you sign the lease. You can say, look, we would like to stay in this space, but the market's gone way up. We will waive our right to terminate if we can extend our lease beyond the current right to terminate or beyond the actual lease termination date, if we can keep these low rental rates. And on the flip side, if the market's gone below where you're currently paying, you can use that right to terminate to say, look, we will terminate this lease and go somewhere else for much cheaper. In fact, we can probably get the next landlord to pay for our termination penalty. However, if we stay here, we will waive our right to terminate, but we will take our current rental rate and reset it down to current market rates. And so that's a highly unused tool for tenants because, frankly, brokers are lazy. Tenant rep brokers are lazy and they just want to get a deal done. They don't want to get the best deal done for their clients. And number 2 is landlords are hesitant to give it because it devalues their property. Now, I'm going to give you one more tool, one more lever that tenants can pull that, again, lazy brokers don't do it. And that is, most brokers will want to put in a right to renew, right? Tenants want the right to keep access to their space even when their lease expires. And so on a right to renew, what a lazy tenant rep broker is going to do and what a landlord is going to want is, sure, we will give you the right to renew at the then market rates,
Hmm.
meaning you're back negotiating. And of course, if the market has gone up, the landlord gets to make a lot more money. And of course, if the market's gone down, you will be able to, you should be able to negotiate it back lower. But the problem is, you got a lot of uncertainty as the business owner of what your renewal rate's going to be. But exceptional brokers will do at Tenant Advisory Group is we will say, yes, we would like a right to renew at the then escalated rate in the lease.
Mm.
What that means is whatever we're paying and we step up every year, there's an escalation. And whatever our rent is at that time, we'll take our current escalations. Now, what you do with that is you set the cap. So even if the market is way higher, the landlord cannot renegotiate that rate higher. However, Derek, now here's the tricky part, is if the market has gone lower, you as the tenant can still restructure and say, look, we would like to stay, but we're not going to stay at 10% above market. We want to negotiate to 5% below market. And so that is really what gives the tenants a lot more leverage. And unfortunately, there are a lot of lazy brokers out there that just they're happy with getting the right to renew at then market rates. And I think I know you are doing your client a disservice by doing that. You need to get it at the then escalated rate that your client is paying in the rent. So there's 3 little tidbits for you, and you can take that to the bank.
Awesome. I appreciate that insight. I mean, that's tremendous there. And I think it really ties into one of the themes you push forward is the importance of integrity and those relationships in commercial real estate. So let me ask, what do most commercial real estate professionals overlook when it comes to building meaningful client relationships that actually last? And do you think technology can help with that?
Yeah, that's a spectacular question, Derek. And I honestly believe that the main thing they overlook is the relationship itself. I get it. We're in a transactional business, right? We are compensated when a transaction is completed. And so it's very easy for people to be motivated and driven by how they're compensated. And because we're compensated transactionally, most brokers and therefore the businesses who work with brokers treat it as a very transactional relationship. Now, what I would tell you is that in my experience, when I build the relationship first, before I focus on the transaction, not only does it help our firm get hired exponentially more frequently, it also helps us retain clients in the future. And it also helps us get better deals because at the end of the day, we're not working to get a deal done. We're working to build a relationship and get a deal that's so great that that client has no choice but to work with us again in the future. They're comfortable introducing us to their clients and making referrals to us. And so it's about not only seeing the longer game, but also seeing the bigger picture, right?
Right.
Which is it's the relationship that's more valuable than the transaction because the relationship could continue on into the future, whereas the transaction, it's a one-time thing. And as far as how I think technology can help that, I think it really comes down to your database and how you manage the contacts that you have and, reaching out to people and your clients and your prospects, not just to say, well, what's going on with your lease? How much time do you have left? Or are you outgrowing your building? Can we sell that and buy a new one for you? But rather keeping notes about what's going on with their business. Where are they having challenges? And do you have a resource that you can refer to them that can help them solve some of these challenges? That's another way where I think we've gotten a tremendous amount of business is not because we're trying to be a vendor, but because we're trying to be a partner. And that comes off very clearly. But the way that I remember all this stuff, the way that I remember to stay in touch with people and to reach out with people and to invite them to events that I'm hosting and to wish them a happy birthday or whatever it is that's not trying to sell my service, that's what tends to build the relationship the deepest and the strongest. And that's what tends to lead to us getting hired over some other cold calling vendor.
Listen, I think that's a tremendous, tremendous, tremendous advice and, experience that you shared with us on really building out meaningful relationships and a meaningful network right? Or for the long term. I think asking people about their challenges and being able to provide value is, something that can put you heads over the competition. So I love that answer. I love
I
that answer.
appreciate that, and being that resource for your clients, not just in your area of expertise, which is, real estate, but serving as a resource that can support them in overcoming obstacles makes you that much more important to them. And I love the emails I get when it's not about real estate. And it's, hey, we need a labor and employment attorney. Do you have somebody? Or, hey, well, our insurance is coming up for renewal. And do you have someone that might be able to provide me some better service than what I'm currently getting? I love those because that means they're trusting in my network and the people that I'm surrounding myself with. And that to me is it's a tremendous endorsement from those people in what I'm doing and who I'm surrounding myself with.
Awesome. I love it. So let me ask you, which metrics are you most focused on improving?
I love it. And so this may surprise you, but based upon our conversation, it shouldn't be a surprise. But when I set out to start Tenant Advisory Group 17 years ago, my number one goal was to deliver an exceptional client experience. Okay. Not just get a deal done. That's what I was taught at the bigger firms is get hired. The mantra is get hired on the deal, close the deal, get paid on the deal, move on to the next deal, right? All transactional, no relationship. And my thought process is, look, I'm going to be competing against firms that have been around for 100 years. They've got 20,000 employees. How do I do that? How do I compete against the Goliaths, the giant, 800-pound gorillas in my industry? And really what it was about for me was to create, if I could deliver an exceptional client experience and get them to talk about it and leave a Google review or give us a testimonial. I thought, a lot of people go to Google to find out about a service provider, right? They go to Google to figure out who they want to hire. Now, fast forward 17, the typical brokerage firm, including the big Goliaths, have anywhere from 5 to 7 reviews, and they're mixed. Some are, these people are horrible. They treated me terribly, and I hate it. They're awful. 1 star. And then the other half of the reviews might be 5 stars, but there's no comments. And oftentimes what I've noticed is that the last name of the people leaving the review is similar to the last name of the CEO or COO of the company. I'm like, that's interesting. This person asked their spouse to leave a review and they just did 5 stars, no comments. So keep in mind, my competitors who've been around for a lot longer, they got a lot more marketing dollars to spend. And because of the more brokerage team they have, they've got more clients. And they have between 5 and 7 reviews that are half and half. Tenant Advisory Group, I believe as of today, has 113 reviews. Every one of them is 5 stars, and every single one of them has a detailed explanation of what we did, and none of them have the same last name, Himelstein, or anyone else that works at my company for that matter. And so, and then the other thing that's letting me know that we're delivering an exceptional client experience. I don't know if you can see amongst all the artwork, the children's artwork, there's a lot of awards back there. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of, and by the way, this is hot off the press. You're the first one to know about it. But the Illinois Real Estate Journal, for the 3rd year in a row, has nominated Tenant Advisory Group as a finalist for both Brokerage Firm of the Year and me as Broker of the Year. That's 3 years in a row that an outside independent source has selected us as a finalist for this award. So that, while awards and honestly, Derek, appearances on a podcast like yours, having that opportunity, to me, it's showing that we're doing something right and that we are delivering that exceptional client experience. And I think that, that type of a metrics, I never heard any of the big firms when I worked there for the first 8 years of my career. They never cared what the clients thought. They never asked for testimonials or reviews because they don't care. They're just trying to get the deal done and move on. Whereas at Tenant Advisory Group, we want that client to be so happy that they leave us a Google review, that they hire us for their next transaction, that they refer us to their neighbors, to their friends, to their other clients. And thankfully that's what's happening. So that's really the main thing that I'm measuring is client satisfaction.
Listen, that is a great metric to keep track of, and I think it shows in the awards, right? Congratulations on that. Congratulations on being a finalist this year again for the third year. And the work speaks for itself.
No, and that's what I'm proud of, right? The team that is embracing our core values, right? Which is
Mm.
be responsive, do what you say you're going to do, and put your client's best interest first. Those three things. When I'm seeing the results, these awards and the podcast interview, that's just a result of every one of our team members embodying these values and striving to deliver an exceptional client experience. It's when you break it down, it's simple, right? It's just business is a simple game. Just treat others as you want to be treated. It's really that simple.
Awesome. Awesome. And I agree wholeheartedly. So let me ask you a final question. If you could solve one major challenge today, what would it be?
Simple. Equal opportunity. I think that when we all have an equal opportunity, I think we all benefit. We all, supporting lower income communities and giving them the same opportunities that more affluent communities have. That's not taking away opportunities from affluent communities. What it's doing is it's allowing when it comes back to the rising tide lifts all boats, right? When we're all successful, we're all going to grow together. Yet when we put forth efforts to keep others down, now we're putting forth an effort towards negativity rather than focusing on doing something good and uplifting others. So those are really it's organizations like I See Stars and Year Up and even Big Brothers Big Sisters, organizations like that work on providing equal opportunities for others, I think is in the best interest of all of us. It's unfortunate what's going on in our political system right now that's actually fighting against equal opportunity. They're reverse suing for DEI initiatives and saying
Right.
that reverse racism, and now they're erasing the history books of what's happened in our country's past. I think the only way we learn and grow is if we're aware of the mistakes that we made and we can learn from them. But scrubbing our history of systemic racism is not going to benefit us as a society going forward. And so the most important cause or challenge in my mind is just being able to provide equal opportunity for everyone, because in the end of the day, it's going to uplift all of us.
Absolutely. Another thing I 1000% agree with you on. I want to thank you for sharing your insights, sharing your experience, and sharing your knowledge here with me today on the Assets and Algorithm podcast. Can you share your contact information if anyone wants to reach out to you for more conversation or to help find a space?
And we're always happy to have conversations about real estate. And if it's not something that we can be the best at, we're going to get you to somebody that can be the best. And so an easy way is our website, which is commercialbroker.com. You'll find a lot of great information on there. There's also an opportunity to reach out and connect with us. But yeah, www.tagcommercialbroker.com is probably the best way to connect with us.
All right. Sounds great, Bill. I appreciate you joining me today, and thanks for coming out.
Thank you, Derek. This was wonderful. I appreciate it.
No problem.